Don't miss these life-changing truths from Pastor Adam Burton's latest sermon at Central Baptist Church.
Church, the pit of sin is real. The walls are steep, and there is no water and nothing to hold on to. And over centuries, plenty of people have walked by the edge and offered whatever they had. Philosophers threw down their best thinking. Politicians threw down their programs. Moralists threw down their advice. Good, well-meaning people threw down their prescriptions and their prayers. But none of it reached the bottom of the pit. Because what the prisoner needed was not something thrown down from the edge. What he needed was someone who was willing to climb all the way down. And that is exactly what the king on that donkey did. If you had been standing on the road into Jerusalem that Sunday morning, you would have heard the crowd before you saw the procession. Cloaks are spread on the road. Palm branches are waving. People are shouting words from Psalm 118. Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. The whole city is stirred. Something was happening. Something big. And in the middle of all of it, Jesus rode in on a borrowed donkey. Now, if you were a first century Jew standing in that crowd, you knew exactly what that image meant. You had grown up hearing Zechariah 9, verse 9. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Behold, your king is coming to you. You had been waiting for this king your whole life. And so had your father. And so his father before him. Generations of waiting. And now here he was. The problem was, most of the crowd thought they knew what kind of rescue was coming. They wanted Rome gone. They wanted the occupation ended, the taxes stopped, the humiliation finished. They wanted a king who would ride that donkey right into the palace and take over. When they shouted, Hosanna, they weren't just praising God. The word means save us now. They were making a request. They were telling Jesus exactly what kind of rescue they had in mind. But Zechariah had told them something else entirely. Something they had perhaps had read, but never fully heard. The king who was coming was righteous and humble, yes, but he was also coming to do something far more urgent than to drive out Rome. He was coming to pull his people out of a pit, a waterless pit, a pit that no army or revolution, no political program could ever reach. And that pit is the real subject of this passage, because if we are honest this morning, it's this real subject of our lives too. Here's what I want you to see in Zechariah 9 through 13. Jesus is the humble king who came to rescue prisoners from a pit they could never escape on their own. That's the promise Zechariah made 500 years before Palm Sunday, and it's the same promise that rode into Jerusalem on a donkey that morning. So let us look at it together, starting with the character of the king himself. Behold the king's character. Let's look at verse 9 together and listen to how Zechariah describes this king. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he, humbled and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Notice that God opens this promise with a command to rejoice greatly and shout aloud. There's energy here. There's excitement, a sense that something worth celebrating is breaking into the world. And then he tells us why. Your king is coming to you. Zechariah uses 3 words to describe this king. And I want to spend a moment with each one because they're doing real theological work. Righteous, saved, humble. The first word is righteous. And in the Hebrew, this has an active quality. It means that the king governs with perfect moral uprightness. He administers justice without partiality, without corruption, without failure. Every king Israel had known fell short here. David sinned. Solomon drifted. The long line of kings that followed them filled the history books with compromise. But this king carries the righteousness of God himself into his reign. Now that matters enormously to someone who's sitting in the pit. The pit is a place of divine justice. It's because sin has a consequence, and that consequence is a separation from a holy God. What the prisoner needs is someone who can actually stand before God on their behalf, someone whose righteousness is sufficient to satisfy what justice demands. This king is that person. The second word is saved. And the translation gets interesting here. Some of your Bibles might say having salvation. Others say victorious. But the underlying Hebrew word here is actually a passive form. It means that the king himself has been saved. He's been delivered. He has been brought through an ordeal by God. He has gone into the deep place, and God brought him out. Now, you read that in light of the New Testament, and it lands with tremendous weight. The king who rode into Jerusalem that Sunday was heading toward the most severe ordeal imaginable. A betrayal, a trial, a cross, a tomb. And on the third day, God vindicated him completely. He came through. A king who has been through the ordeal and come out on the other side is fully qualified to reach into the pit and bring his people with him. The third word is humble or lowly. It's the word that Psalms use for the poor and afflicted. And it's the same language that Isaiah reaches for when he describes the suffering servant. The king has come down to where the people are. He comes not to serve, but to serve, and in doing so to bring glory to the God who promised this king from the beginning. Zechariah seals all of these qualities into a single image. He is mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. In the ancient world, the donkey carried a specific meaning. Kings rode war horses when they came to conquer. A king on a donkey was coming in peace for the sake of his people, with gentleness and accessibility built right into his posture. Matthew and John both quote this verse directly when they describe the triumphal entry. They wanted their readers to make this connection. This is the king Zechariah promised. This is the one. The crowd that day, they cheered, and they were right to cheer. But the king they were welcoming had a deeper rescue in mind than most of them realized. He was righteous enough to stand before God on their behalf. He had been through the ordeal, and he knew the way through. And he had humbled himself all the way down to where they were. He came for them. And he came for you. Secondly, behold the king's kingdom. Look at verse 10 with me. I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak peace to the nations. His rule shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. There we go. Notice the shift that happens here. God himself is speaking in the first person. I will cut off the chariots. I will cut off the war horse. He's not delegating this to a general or an army. He is personally dismantling every instrument of military power that his people had ever leaned on for security. The chariots, the war horses, the battle bows, all of it gone. Now, to a first century Jew, that would have sounded alarming. You're taking away our defenses in a world that's occupied by Rome. I mean, that feels like the wrong direction entirely. But God is making a point that his people desperately needed to hear. The kingdom this king establishes does not advance by force. It never did. Every time Israel put their confidence in military strength, in their alliances with foreign powers, in their own strategic brilliance, it ended badly. The prophet Isaiah had already said it plainly. Woe to those who go down to Egypt for help, who rely on horses, who trust in chariots because they are many. The problem was never in the size of the army. The problem was where their trust was placed. So God clears the field, and into that cleared field, the king speaks peace to the nations. The word that Zechariah uses here is shalom. If you've heard that word before, you probably think of it as a greeting, something like a hello or a goodbye. But in the Hebrew world, shalom carried the weight of an entire theology. It was not simply the absence of conflict. It was the presence of everything good. Think about the difference between two kinds of sleep. The sleep that you get the night before something hard. Maybe it's a difficult conversation you have to have, or a medical procedure, or an uncertain outcome. And then you have the sleep that you get after it's over, and it went better than you feared. You know, the first night, you lie there, you're running through all of the scenarios, right? The second night, you're just at rest. Shalom is living in the second kind of sleep permanently. Not because life has no hard days ahead, but because you are at peace with the God who holds every single one of them. And that is exactly what sin steals. The pit, it's not just a place of guilt and punishment. It's a place where shalom is completely absent. There's no rest there. There's no settledness, no sense that the ground beneath you is solid, just the quiet awareness that something is profoundly wrong and the helpless inability to fix it. The king who rides in on that donkey comes to restore what sin destroyed. And then Zechariah tells us something about the scope of this kingdom that should stop us in our tracks. His rule shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. Now, Zechariah is quoting directly from Psalm 72, a psalm written about Solomon, but always understood to point beyond him to the ultimate king that God would send. Listen here how Psalm 72 puts it. May he have dominion from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. That connection is deliberate. Zechariah is saying that everything that Psalm 72 promised about the perfect king, everything Israel had hoped for across centuries of longing, finds its fulfillment in this one. The humble king on the donkey is not a regional figure managing a small territory in the ancient Near East. He is the king of everything. And that matters for you this morning personally. The reign of this king is not limited to the people who happen to be standing on that road in Jerusalem. It's not confined to one ethnic group or one nation or one generation. It stretches to the ends of the earth, which means it stretches to Maysville, Kentucky. It stretches to your home, to your marriage, to your workplace, your struggle. There is no corner of your life that falls outside the jurisdiction of this King. His shalom is available to every prisoner in the pit, in every nation, all the way to the ends of the earth. The crowd on Palm Sunday, they were shouting for peace too. They just had a smaller version of it in mind. They wanted Rome gone and their national dignity restored. But the king they were welcoming was carrying something far greater than political peace. He was carrying the shalom of God, purchased at a price they could not yet imagine and available to anyone who would receive it. Which brings us to the question this whole passage has been building toward. How does he actually get us out? Lastly, behold the king's rescue. Read verses 11 through 13 with me now. As for you also, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will set your prisoners free from the waterless pit. Return to your stronghold, O prisoners of hope. Today I declare that I will restore you double. For I have bent Judah as my bow. I have made Ephraim its arrow. I will stir up your sons, O Zion, against your sons, O Greece, and wield you like a warrior's sword. Everything in this passage has been building to this moment. We've seen the character of the king. We've seen the scope of his kingdom. Now Zechariah answers the question that matters most. How does the king actually get his people out of the pit? He answers it in 6 words. Because of the blood of my covenant. Not because of their worthiness. Not because of their effort or their resolve or their religious performance. No, the sole basis for the rescue is the blood of a covenant that God himself initiated and God himself fulfilled. I want you to sit with that for a moment before we move on, because it is the most important sentence in this entire passage. In the ancient world, covenants were not signed with a pen. They were sealed with blood. When God made his covenant with Abraham, animals were cut in two, and God himself passed between the two pieces, essentially saying that if I failed to keep this promise, may what happened to these animals happen to me. When God gave the law at Sinai to Israel, Moses took the blood of the sacrifices and he sprinkled it on the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant." Blood was not incidental to the covenant. It was the covenant's foundation. It is the price of the promise. And Zechariah is telling his people 500 years before Palm Sunday that their rescue from the pit is going to cost blood. Covenant blood. The blood of a sacrifice sufficient to satisfy the justice of God and open the way out of the pit for good. Now here's where this passage connects directly to the rest of Holy Week. The king who rode into Jerusalem on Sunday did not come simply to wave at the crowd and to give a few inspiring speeches. He came to bleed. He came to be the covenant sacrifice that every animal sacrifice in Israel's history had been pointing toward. When Jesus stood at the table on Thursday night, he took the cup. He said, "This is my blood of the new covenant, poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." He was telling his disciples exactly what Zechariah promised. The blood of the covenant has arrived. The price of the rescue is being paid. You see, you cannot separate Palm Sunday from Good Friday. The parade leads to the cross. The donkey road leads to Calvary, and it had to, because the only way out of the pit is through the blood of the covenant. Now look at what God calls the rescued people in verse 12. Look at it. He calls them prisoners of hope. It's a striking phrase. I want you to feel both of the words because they're still prisoners in some sense. They're still living in a world full of affliction and trial and difficulty. The rescue has been purchased, but the world is not yet fully restored. And it's in that in-between place. The temptation is to look at your circumstances and to conclude that there is no hope, that the pit is winning, that the king is not coming. But God calls his people prisoners of hope, people who have seen the king coming, and they cannot stop believing that the rescue is real, even when everything around them seems to say otherwise. And he gives them a command: return to your stronghold. Now, historically, that meant returning to the safety of Jerusalem. But for us, the stronghold is Christ himself. He is the refuge. He is the strong tower. When the weight of the world presses in and the pit tries to pull you back, you run to him, not to your own strength or your own resources. You run to the king who already paid the price to get you out. And then God makes a promise that will carry us all the way through to Easter morning. Today I declare that I will restore to you double the joy for the sorrow, double the blessing for the trial, double the life for the death. The king does not simply patch things up and just leave you where you were. He restores, and he restores extravagantly. We'll come back to that promise next week. But before we get there, I want to leave you with a picture of what this all looks like from the inside. There's a scene from The West Wing I've never forgotten. If you've watched this show, you probably know exactly the one that I mean. Leo McGarry is talking to Josh Lyman, who had just been through something traumatic and is struggling badly. And Leo tells him this story. A guy is walking down the street and he falls into a hole. The walls are so steep and he cannot get out. A doctor passes by and the guy shouts, "Hey, can you help me out?" The doctor writes a prescription and he throws it in the hole and he moves on. Then a priest comes along and the guy shouts, "Father, I'm down in this hole. Can you help me out?" The priest writes out a prayer and throws it down in the hole and moves on. Then a friend walks by. "Hey, Joe, it's me. Can you help me out?" And the friend jumps in the hole. The guy says, "Are you stupid? Now we're both down here." And the friend says, "Yeah, but I've been down here before, and I know the way out." Aaron Sorkin wrote that story about friendship and loyalty. And it is that. But every time I think of it, I think about this passage in Zechariah 9. Because that is exactly what this passage is describing. Church, the pit of sin is real. The walls are steep. And there is no water and nothing to hold on to. And over centuries, plenty of people have walked by the edge and offered whatever they had. Philosophers threw down their best thinking. Politicians threw down their programs. Moralists threw down their advice. Good, well-meaning people threw down their prescriptions and their prayers. But none of it reached the bottom of the pit. Because what the prisoner needed was not something thrown down from the edge. What he needed was someone who was willing to climb all the way down. And that is exactly what the king on that donkey did. He did not stay at the edge. He came all the way down through the incarnation, through the suffering, through the cross, through the tomb. He went to the deepest place and he came out on the other side. And when he reaches down into your pit and he takes you by the hand, he's not guessing at the way out. He has been there before. He knows the way. I'll invite our worship team. Palm Sunday is not a parade story. It never was. The crowd got the celebration right, but they missed the rescue. They were shouting for a king who had fixed their political situation, and standing right in front of them was a king who had come to do something infinitely more important. He had come to pull them out of a pit they could not climb out of on their own. He had come because of the blood of the covenant. He had come because he had been to the deepest place and he knew the way out. And he is still coming. That's what I want you to hear this morning. That the king who rode into Jerusalem on a donkey has not stopped moving toward his people. He is still righteous enough to stand before God on your behalf. He has still been through the ordeal and come out on the other side. And he is still humble enough to come all the way down to where you are. So here's the question Zechariah leaves us with. Where are you this morning? Some of you know exactly what the pit feels like. You've been there long enough to know that the walls are steep, that there's nothing to hold on to. You've tried the prescriptions and the programs and the philosophies, and none of them ever reached the bottom. And maybe you've come close to concluding that there is no hope. Friend, Zechariah has a word for you this morning. You are not a prisoner of despair. You are a prisoner of hope. And the king who paid the price of the covenant is standing at the edge of your pit right now. Return to your stronghold. Come to him. He knows the way out. Some of you have been out of the pit for years. You know what it's like to be rescued. But maybe this Palm Sunday morning, you've drifted back to the edge. Maybe the afflictions of this past season have worn you down, and the shalom that once marked your life feels distant. The word for you this morning is the same. Return to your stronghold. He is still here. He has not moved. And for some of you, today might be the first time you have really heard this. You came here this morning because it's Palm Sunday and someone invited you, or it just felt like the right thing to do. And somewhere in this passage, something landed differently than you expected. That's not an accident. That's the king coming toward you. In a moment, we're going to sing together. And I'm going to stand down front. If you need to respond what God has done this morning, Whether that is trusting Christ for the first time or coming back to the stronghold after a long time away or simply acknowledging that you have been in the pit and you are ready to take His hand, I would be honored to stand with you. You do not have to have everything figured out. You just have to come. Because the King is righteous enough to receive you. He has been through the ordeal and He knows the way. And He is humble enough to meet you exactly where you are, just like He has always been. I'm Pastor Adam Burton from Central Baptist Church. I want to personally thank you for watching our sermon today. It means so much to us that you've taken time to connect with God's Word through our ministry. If this message encouraged you, I invite you to explore more about our church at cbcmaysville.com. You'll find resources, upcoming events, and ways to get involved. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram for more content like this. We'd love to stay connected with you and to continue to grow together in faith. Thanks again for watching. God bless you, and I hope to see you soon, either online or in person.